So we just read the Grimm brothers story, Maid Maleen, and you want to give us a little summary, and then we'll talk about it.
Mhm. So there's a princess and a prince that fall in love, and um, they have eyes for no one else, but um, the princess is actually betrothed to someone else that her father, the king, has chosen for her. And when she goes to speak to her father about not having eyes for anyone else but the prince, her father uh, goes into a passion or rage and um, tells her that he's going to lock her up in a tower for 7 years to see if she's still willful. So he actually goes through with that and takes her and her maid and locks them both up in the tower, and they survive on meat and drink that's
Yeah,
stored in there.
and there's no window, and the walls are so thick she can't hear when the prince comes by and calls out to her, and they have enough food for the 7 years, and that's how they keep the time.
hmm So as the food starts running lower, they know that the end of the 7 years is approaching. But the day of the seventh, like on the seventh year, like no one has come to free them. So they start to worry, and Maid Maleen finds she uses like a utensil or something, and
Yeah,
starts
butter
like
knife.
chipping a butter knife and starts chipping at one of the stone blocks in the tower.
Yeah, the
Um,
mortar.
yeah, and it's hard work, and they take turns with her and the maid, but eventually they're able to chip out more blocks, and then sunlight is able to come in. And when it's big enough to peek outside, they notice that it's a wasteland. I think like there aren't people, I think. And
Mhm.
the land seemed barren,
Yeah,
and
the
it
castle
looks
was
like,
ruined. All the inhabitants had
yeah,
been killed by the enemy.
yeah.
Her
So,
father is no longer around.
mhm. So they see this and they realize like they need to get out. So once the hole is big enough from their work, they're able to get out and leave the castle. And they travel from country to country, but they're kind of turned away and not helped. They try to look for work, but they're turned away. And they finally reach another country and go to the palace there.
And by the way, they have to survive on uncooked nettles.
Mhm. Yeah, so they reach the palace, but they're turned away. But finally, one of the cooks maybe takes pity on them and tells them that they can be kitchen maids for the castle. So, Maid Maleen and her maid go there and work as kitchen maids. And her role specifically is to accommodate the princess. And it turns out that this incoming princess is being sent to the castle to marry the prince, and the prince is actually the prince that she loved 7 years ago, and that she was locked up for. Um, and the thing about this princess is that she's very ugly, from according to the story,
And
and
her
it's
heart was as wicked as her face was ugly.
mhm, so much so that she's kind of trying to avoid going along the crowds on her wedding day. So she comes up with an idea to have Maid Maleen be the one to take her place in the wedding. And Maid Maleen refuses, but the princess, because she has an ugly heart, like threatens her life if she doesn't agree to it after like several requests to do so. So Maid Maleen realizes she has no choice and decides to go through with the wedding. So the princess dresses her in the wedding gown and jewels, and she's very beautiful. And when she goes out into the crowd, they seem to like her. Um, and once she reaches the altar to wed herself to the prince is stricken by how much she looks like Maid Maleen. and I think he makes a comment about it. I'm not sure, but she pretends not to know Maid Maleen, I think. Um,
Yeah, but she mentions her name in some way or something like
okay.
that. But yeah, and so she
Hmm.
passes the on the way to the altar, she passes the nettle bush and she kind of
Hmm.
sings a little ditty, uh, about how I ate you unboiled, I ate you unroasted. And then the king's son asked what she's talking about, and she said, Nothing, I was only thinking of Maid Maleen. So that happens three times. The second time with
Hmm.
a footbridge, like, Don't break, I am not the true bride. And church door, Don't break, I'm not the true bride. And every time he asked her, What are you saying? And she said, I was only thinking of Maid Maleen.
Yeah, so yeah, they're married, and when the
But
wedding night.
but
Oh,
after the church door, after the third time, he gives her a chain necklace.
mhm. Yeah, so Maid Maleen goes back to the princess and gives her back everything except the necklace. And it's the wedding night, so the ugly princess conceals herself with a veil, and so that the prince can't see her. And the prince decides to test her to see if she's really uh Maid Maleen, or the lady or the lady he married that looks like Maid Maleen. So he asked her about the nettle bush, and the ugly princess says, like, I don't eat nettles. What are you or I don't talk to nettles. What are you talking about? And he replies that if you don't know about it, then you're not the true bride. So she runs back to Maid Maleen and demands to know what she said to the nettle bush. So Maid Maleen tells her, and she runs back and says, like, nettle bush, uh,
Yeah, she says the
something,
ditty that,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
Maid Maleen said before.
Yeah. So then the prince remembers the bridge. So he said, like, you said something about, I heard you talking about the bridge, and if you don't know what it is, you're not the true bride. And then of course, the ugly princess says, I don't talk to bridges and stuff. But she still runs back to Maid Maleen and demands to know
She
what
never
she
catches
said.
on, like, you know, you try to suss out the answer or something like that, Like
Mhm.
every time it's just this blunt like reply.
Yeah. So she threatens her and to know what was said, and Maid Maleen tells her. So she runs back. And it's the same thing with the church door. So after the prince says the same thing, that he knows she's not the true bride if she doesn't know what she said at the church door, she runs back and this time threatens Maid Maleen's life if she doesn't reveal that. So of course Maid Maleen tells her, and she runs back again for the third time to give the response to the prince. So it seems the prince is still suspicious, so he tells her, okay, well, where's the jewel I gave you around your neck? And the ugly princess says, what jewel? You didn't give me any jewel. So uh and then the prince says that yeah, he did give her one, and I guess he knows she's not the true bride.
So then he
So
unveils her. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so after that, like, the ugly princess tries to get her servants to drag Maid Maleen out and kill her. Um, but Maid Maleen screams, and that draws the prince's attention. So he runs over to her and rescues her, and
Yeah,
says
and
that.
and yeah, they lived basically happily ever after.
Mhm.
And
And
mm.
she does confirm that she is Maid Maleen. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, she is like,
that would
yeah.
that would be a disappointing story if the whole time that she was actually the Maid Maleen servant and Maid Maleen had It actually died, in the tower or something like that. Or
Yeah,
some kind of it just keeps going until the
yeah,
prince like
yeah, and the ugly princess gets her head chopped off.
yeah, they weren't playing around with that. The false bride was rewarded for what she had done by having her head cut off. I guess that is a pretty big deal. I mean, with like political, with marriages and things.
Mm.
But yeah, there's some notable things about this story. When they Maid Maleen and her servant girl come out of the tower, the fact that the whole land has been destroyed. Like I don't feel like I've seen that in one of these stories before, or maybe in any type of fairy tale,
Mm.
like a slaughter. It's mostly sort of seems like they exist in these timeless kinds of things, but this is like a political, historical kind of a more realistic kind of setting. Although
Yeah.
in a mythical type of in the tower for 7 years with 7 years worth of food and
Mm.
everything. That was the mythical kind of touch.
Yeah, and I don't know, so I think when I heard the other stories, there's at least some kind of reconciliation with the king or something, but her dad just kind of disappeared in the story, never
Yeah,
to be heard from again.
yeah. Although there's other stories where there's like a kind of forceful, mean, somewhat evil father,
Mm.
and he disappears. Like I can't remember what story we read before, but the girl without hands, remember? I mean, her Miller
Mhm.
father just kind of disappears afterwards, right?
Mm.
He's never heard from again. But yeah, in this story too. Yeah. But even more noteworthy is the fact that I mean these are princes and kings, and the king at the beginning of the story that's trying to force Maid Maleen into a politically fortuitous marriage. I mean that's the way they generally did things,
Mm.
and it's interesting here that two political marriages are thwarted, and the young beautiful people end up getting to marry who they loved, the one they loved, but they really earned it.
Mm.
Like I guess you could say, I mean, Maid Maleen earned it from her trials, her 7 years of difficulty, and she had to escape, and she escaped without the prince's help. Interesting.
Mhm.
Um, and the prince had to not be deceived. He was uh he had several opportunities of being deceived, and he passed all of them.
Mm.
Although the ugly princess, I mean, she wasn't really like exactly very conniving or anything. Like she sort of
Mm.
just like uh she's like as unsubtle as you can get.
Yeah.
She just basically tries to, threaten Maid Maleen with death, and that's how she'll.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you notice about the story?
Mm. So that and yeah, I was just want thinking about what the nettle and bridge and the symbolism of that plant too. Because I don't know much about nettles,
Yeah, me
but I
neither.
think they're like thorny. Mm.
Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
I'm sort of thinking of it. Yeah.
Mm.
And but yeah, then there's the footbridge and there's the door. Those are all thresholds.
Mm.
The nettle might also have some sort of natural threshold significance.
Mm.
And it is in a way a threshold in the story in that it was what helped them to barely survive
Mm.
from her earlier life as the king's daughter to this life as like the scullery maid or whatever.
Mm.
And then yeah, the footbridge is a threshold, and then the church door
Mm.
is a threshold.
Mm.
Yeah, and she has to pass three of those. It's
Yeah.
interesting that also this story, the privations that are gone through by the princess rather than the prince.
Mhm. Mm.
And of course, there's a lot of reversals. You know, I think in these types of stories are tend to be lots of reversals.
Mm.
The the princess is shut up in the tower, and the prince cannot she cannot hear the prince cannot hear her. But then
Mm.
later, when she is almost killed, she cries out, and he can hear her, and he saves her then. But wasn't there some reversals with like the ugly princess and her, or just maybe it's just because she was the bride to be, and now she is like the
Mm.
lady in the the servant or something like that.
Yeah, or I think it's weird because she wanted, I guess, in a way, she wanted the Maid Maleen to be the one to marry him, even though disguised bit like but
Yeah,
um
it was almost like she was giving the position to Maid Maleen because
yeah,
she was afraid of being humiliated by the mocking villagers.
yeah. When sometimes like in other stories it's like it might be more openly like taken or by the deserving character or something. But
Really?
I don't know, but I don't know how to explain it. But
I feel
um
like they this I'm not sure, but
like
I
it
feel
was
like
like imposed and Maid Maleen didn't really want to, and she was seemed to be willing to still not marry the prince. Yeah.
yeah, well, she wasn't. Yeah, she didn't want to be a usurper. She
Mm.
wanted to have her rightful place. The story shows how after the wedding ceremony, when she was brought back to the bridal, or I mean the maiden chambers, she was careful to take everything off that was the ugly princess's, and to only keep her tattered gray dress
Mm.
and her the thing that the prince had given to her. So there's
Mm.
something about this story about authenticity a lot.
Mm.
Um, like the prince gave it to literally her, even though he was thinking in some way that she was the ugly princess, but he knew
Mhm.
she wasn't. So there's sort of this
Yeah.
um, obvious truth amidst something that is supposedly a charade.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I
this it's like the authenticity shines throughout the whole story. The authentic love endures the 7 years of imprisonment, and in the meantime, the kingdom of the rageful, stubborn king is destroyed, and then the princess and her maid go through like a difficult kind of journey
Mm.
of survival and pity, and but they end up, yeah, kind of coming back and getting marriage to the prince. It's like the good survives. The two authentic characters, the only two authentic characters are the ones that sort of get what they want, and everyone else is like destroyed.
Mm.
The ugly princess is executed. The king is, you know, his kingdom is ruined.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what this story seems to me to be about, like authenticity. What do you think?
Mm. No, we're just kind of thinking how throughout the story, like the princess only seems to like survive or take what she needs and nothing more. So she's like surviving on nettle. Um, like you said, she only takes the necklace to because she needs that to prove that her identity. Um, and like the yeah, so she's not like act like trying to take more than she needs. So again, kind of, but then at the end, all of that kind of endurance and suffering pays off. And like you said, she gets what she wants.
Yeah. Yeah, she accepts her place. Like she doesn't seem to kind of, stamp her foot and, try to get what a princess is supposed to get after
Yeah.
she leaves the tower. She's willing to be a lowly maid and servant and everything.
Mhm.
And yeah, she doesn't, yeah, try to steal the the bridegroom. But the ugly princess tries to hide her identity. She doesn't want to accept the ridicule that she's going to get for being an ugly person. She wants, yeah, she kind of tries to finagle things to
Mhm.
like to suit her wishes and her fears.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, this reminded me a little bit of Cinderella. There's the prince gives the gift that ends up revealing the identity of the one he truly loves. Any other ideas about this one?
So far.
Yeah, yeah. But still, to me, the political side of this story kind of is salient. But yeah, politics versus authenticity. One would like to
Yeah.
to think that authenticity always wins out, and
Mm.
it probably does on some level, but not always as neatly as in this story.
Mm.
Okay, well, until next week.